I specifically remember my grandmother at the time when I was probably in middle school. She was living with us, and I specifically remember her, making me swear to become a doctor. I don't know what the conversation was or where, but I
Yeah.
specifically remember that because I was like, "Oh shit, I gotta be a doctor or I'm going to hell."
This will be the
Okay.
official start, and this is like a good place for you to do like a little introduction of who you are and what do you do.
So who am I? My name is NABIL ZAIDI. I'm the eldest son of Pakistani parents who immigrated to New Jersey, which is where I was born, making me the first generation American. And I'm sure, as we have this conversation, we can loop back into that for context for a lot of the topics we'll be talking about. But what I'm best known for is actually what I do. Um, I and myself and two of my cousins, Faraz and Aram, we started a clothing brand called Profound. We're in stores such as Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom, and a few others in the luxury sphere. And we started in 2008, so it's been a long journey. I'm 31 years old now, and we started when I was turning 18, I believe. So that pretty much took up most of my adult life so far. So that's what I'm known for, and that's who I am.
Dude, wow, 18 is young to
Yeah.
jump straight into that. On that note, because you started so young, at that point, was being a doctor or any of the traditional careers like lawyer, engineers, whatever, was that part of your path? Like, was that something that your parents were trying to push you towards?
Man, you know what? Well, let's put it this way. Like, I'm sure every brown person or most brown people had that type of discussion before.
Yeah.
I specifically remember my grandmother at the time when I was probably in middle school. She was living with us, and I specifically remember her, making me swear to become a doctor. I don't know what the conversation was or where, but I
Yeah.
specifically remember that because I was like, "Oh shit, I gotta be a doctor or I'm going to hell." It was crazy. So other than that, man, it was mostly passive.
Yeah.
There were times that I did consider it, but very passively. And then the reason for it is because I guess the people I was around when I was growing up, all my friends were super creative, and I'm sure we'll have a conversation about the upbringing and everything and like with the influence. But as far as my parents go, I mean, it's an interesting conversation because, it's great that you have this platform to talk about these things because the reason why the title of this podcast is what it is because, being a doctor is heavily pushed on, and it's kind of interesting, and we should also like evaluate why that is. Like, why do you think that, you know, brown parents push this whole narrative or this goal to become for the children to become doctors? Why do you think that?
So I think it stems, my personal opinion, it stems all from security, I think, and also their own upbringing. Like coming from where
Yeah,
they're coming from, that seemed to be the most secure profession, but also the most respectable profession.
right.
And then, taking probably the biggest risk that anybody could take, like coming to a new country to try to give us opportunity. It's funny because they didn't, I don't think they saw the inherent risk of doing something like that because they were like, oh, this is the
Yeah,
right move. But when they
yeah,
got here, they still can shed from that same mindset that, doctor, or even something like a lawyer or engineer or something like that, like
right.
that's
Yeah,
security,
yeah.
that's respectable, and also, financially it's probably the
Yep.
greatest path to take too. And
Yeah.
times have changed, and the opportunities have changed, but breaking that mindset that they grew up with for like 40 years or whatever, like 30, like you can't break that. And I
Mm.
think that that's where it comes from. That's what I think.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. Bro, you absolutely hit the nail on the head. I have a very my thoughts are the same. It's like, my parents and I think most immigrant families, whether they're brown or not,
Yeah.
they coming here is a big sacrifice for them, coming to America, I mean. They sacrifice everything. They come with not much. And so they face a lot of financial hardships. So their goal is to give their children or their family a better life or more
Yeah.
opportunities financially. And like you said, at their time, what is that? That's becoming a doctor, most, like you
Yeah.
said, most respectable and probably the most financial secure position or job career that they can have their children chase. So they take it as like that. Like, I came to this country to give my son or daughter the best opportunity for life, and this is the career path that they know can lead them to that. And like you said, like, times have changed a lot since, our parents have immigrated here. I forgot what year I think my parents immigrated here like a year or two before I was born. um and then back then, like, everything was entrepreneurship. Let's talk about entrepreneurship. It wasn't
Yeah.
really a thing, as it is now. Or social media wasn't anything. Content wasn't really
Yeah.
anything. And that's what all the jobs and positions and careers are today, that they circle around, like entrepreneurship. A lot of it's
Yeah.
content, a lot of it is, social media and whatnot. So like you said, man, like, times has changed, and financial security is a big reason why this whole thing has been pushed. And you can't blame him for that, man. Like, I
No.
know, like, I in the past, bro, in the past, I used to, so in the past, as we were starting this, I also dropped out of college. So that was another big battle I had to face as
Oh,
well while
it's a huge
pursuing this.
one.
Yeah, yeah. So just to give you a little bit of context about that. So, like I said, we started this in 2008. So that was the summer I graduated high school. And then I was going to college for like 2 years. And then alongside that, we were growing the business. And then, we were just blessed to have the wheels starting to turn. So I made the decision, like, to focus more of my time on the business and the brand. Because I was, at the time, my parents are, still working class people. So at the time, I also had a full-time job to support myself financially while going through college full time. So I was working full time, going to college full time, then switched to part time, and then still doing the brand, doing Profound. So this is around when I was 18 to 19 to 20 years old. So then, man, I had to make a decision. I didn't even consult my parents about it, to be honest. Like, I mean, it's probably not the best way to do it, but um, I know you also dropped out of the whole
Yeah.
medical school, so I definitely want to hear your story. But I remember it was just like too much for me to handle, and like, I just had the thing about me is, man, like, maybe I do show it in a way, or maybe I don't. Is like, whenever I believe in something, I truly stand by it and believe in it. And then at that time, when I was juggling school and the brand and growing the business and everything we're doing, like, I believed it was the right decision to make. And when I come to that point, like, there's no convincing me otherwise. Like, I'm super hard headed when I follow my gut, and that was my gut. It was like, okay, so you know I always wanted to be an entrepreneur of some sort. And then I could definitely talk more about that. But I remember it was like, uh, I think it was like a spring semester, second year. I was going to register for classes. Then I'm just like, fuck this shit. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And I just ended up not registering for that semester. And that's how things just started falling into place for that. And I just
Yeah.
dropped out. But what about you? How that happened?
Dude, so a couple of things that you mentioned that I wanted to hit on.
Yeah.
One, the parents thing that we were talking about, I think something that they didn't realize, or that wasn't their intention, but them coming here, I think the
Mm-hmm.
biggest gift that they were giving us was choice. And them
Mm.
coming here, they thought they
Yeah.
were going to get stability, but I think the great, because that's not what you have or didn't have back at home. You
Yeah.
didn't have choice. So here
Yeah.
you can start with anything. You can start with nothing and become anything you want. So I think they didn't
Right.
realize what they were giving us choice. So when you got older,
Yeah.
when you wanted to make that choice, then it becomes a problem. Like, oh, that's not why I came here.
Yeah.
You should follow a traditional path. I think that was one is an issue. And then it's interesting that you point something out, and Ani put it in a very good way, that how you said you didn't really consult your parents when you're doing something. In our
Mm-hmm.
culture, we're kind of beaten to like, anytime we do something, you got to talk to your parents or your elders, right?
Yep.
But he
Yep.
pointed something out, which is very true, that if you think about how they were brought up with their experience, they have no idea what an entrepreneur is, right? They have no idea
Yep.
what it means to start a brand over here, or
Exactly.
start a brand, period, right? So
Yeah.
yes, I understand the respect aspect, and yeah, you should consult them and have their support, but there does come a point where your ambition might far out not outshine, but your ambition might far exceed their knowledge in that topic. So there
Yeah.
kind of is no point. Like this, sometimes there is that you gotta pull the trigger on what you think is the right thing to do, and and then you're the one who's going to live your life and live with those consequences.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was a similar thing too. I got to a point where I was extremely unhappy with where I was going. And the deeper I got into medicine, I realized that this just wasn't the right path for me. And it was funny because people around me who've known me for a while started seeing it too and started telling me that, yo, like you went from a pretty happy person to a pretty sad and miserable person. And I had to reevaluate like what I wanted to do moving forward. And it was a little bit more complicated because I was already married when I started. Like I started med school and got married at the same time. So not only did I have to
Oh,
break this news to my parents, I had to break this news to my in-laws.
wow.
Saying that I was going to drop out. So it was probably the most difficult time, a difficult decision too that I had to make. But it was one of those things that like I knew that weren't going to understand now, but in the long term, I knew that it was definitely worth the fight, and
Yeah.
it honestly did end up being worth the fight. So it was tricky, and like I can empathize a little bit with you about like this dropping out and knowing that this is not the right move for me. And it's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing that we don't talk about even in our culture is that people are different. People learn different. People function differently. For some people, the traditional education path doesn't work. It doesn't make
Mm-hmm.
sense. So why would you continue even putting yourself in debt or whatever was going on with your college at that time? And that was something
Mm-hmm.
I struggled with too, because some people advise like, yo, just finish med school, finish the 4 years, get your degree, and then drop out. I was like, oh, so you want me to
Mm-hmm.
go much deeper into debt and get a degree for something that I'd have no intention of using? So it's funny that
Yeah.
that comes up a lot.
Mm.
These are some like deep, heavy topics. But
Yeah.
you were talking about, yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was gonna say it's actually like very interesting that you bring that up as far as like a med school perspective because well, first of all, I'm assuming that the reason why you did it was because of your parents. Is that true?
It was a combination of my mom always wanted one of us to be a doctor, and it was me and my brother ended up doing it together. And prior
Mm-hmm.
to med school, I actually worked in the healthcare field for like about 9 years.
Mm.
And the next logical step seemed to either get my MBA or get my MD. And all my time working in the healthcare field, people used to just come and tell me like, yo, you would be a really good doctor, or you would be, you probably should think about becoming a doctor. So I used to hear it all the time. And I was like, oh, I know it's something I should be doing anyway. My mom wants me to do it. Everybody's telling me maybe I should do it. And then I did it. It did not turn out to be
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
thought. And
Yeah.
another thing was that all my friends in college, most of them ended up going down the med school route too. And some of them did it way before I did. I went to med school when I was 25. So like a couple of years after I graduated, 26, a couple of years after I graduated college. So a bunch of my friends had already done it. And I saw like as their life progressed, none of them were like happy with the decisions they made. And even to this day, some of them that I still talk to, they talk about this idea of they can't wait to make enough money or invest enough money in things so they can stop practicing clinical medicine.
Mm.
So this idea of you're going to
Mm.
spend most of your life becoming something only to make money to eventually do something else that you really
Right.
want. It's so
Mm.
bizarre. But for a lot
Yeah.
of people, like that's the only option, or that's all they can do. And that to me was
Mm.
crazy.
No, I mean, it makes sense, and I also want to add this because when you're talking about dropping out of college, there's also responsibility because you don't want everybody just dropping out of college.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I do want to encourage like going to college, getting an education. I'm big on education, even though I dropped out. I think that's a
yeah,
big misconception. Like I'm always learning. I don't.
yeah,
I'm sure it's the same with you. You're
100%.
always learning. It's just not the conventional way of learning, but you're
Yeah,
always learning. It's not like you're dropping out and I'm just gonna do me. So always encourage like pursuing education. The only reason why I did it is because I already had something building on the side, and then it was just a matter of how I want to delegate my time. That's what it came down to. It's like, should I keep pursuing an education on a career, which is I'm already doing, and
yeah,
so far is building on towards the right path, or should I just go full force on it? So that was the reason why I did it. It wasn't like screw college, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur. Let me figure it out now, like starting from scratch. That's not how it should work. You know what I mean?
No.
So
No, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good that you pointed that out, and it's funny because I said like a few times when because I posted a lot about when I dropped out. People still hit me up and they ask for advice, whether it's medical school related or other related. They ask me, and one of the first things I ask them is like, "All right, cool, you're deciding that you don't want to do this, but do you know what
Hmm.
you want to do? Because I don't think you
Exactly.
should leave something
There it
without
is.
having
There
any
it is.
plans." So it's funny. I was like, "Yo."
Man.
How are you going to talk to your parents if they ask you, all right, cool, 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 fine. You don't want to do this. So what do you want to do? And if you're
Yeah.
like, I don't know,
Boom.
then that
Boom.
makes your
There it
argument
is.
like you're screwed. So
Yep.
I'm glad you brought this up because that's a very good point that you did this for a very specific reason. No one should just
Hmm.
do it because they want to figure it. You figure it out and then
Yep.
do it.
Yep.
Like people talk about
Exactly.
jobs too. Like don't quit your job until you have something lined up.
Yeah, exactly. Like people, like you said, as far as like, happiness goes, whether it be medical, whether it be like a corporate job, people are generally just like sick of doing what they're doing because they're starting to see on social media that there's so many opportunities out
Yeah.
there that exceeds what they're doing right now as far as like a 9 to 5 goes.
Yeah.
But it's like, you want to quit your job. That's great. But, you know, let's start dabbling into things on the side
Yeah.
first and see how you like it, see if it's working out. Because it's not easy, man. It's not, entrepreneurship is not easy.
Dude, 100%. This is one thing that I try to bring up a lot, even because in freelance or entrepreneurship, the thing people don't
Hmm.
understand, there is a beauty in a 9 to 5 too. Like you clock in, you clock out, and you're
Oh
done. You
yeah.
go home and you do whatever the hell you want. When you're an
Hmm.
entrepreneur or you're doing freelance, your time is not your time. You are always working, right? Because it's your
Hmm.
business. So your business demands all your attention all the time. So I think
Yeah,
that misconception, people, I think sometimes don't understand that, yeah, you do have technically more freedom. You can take a day off whenever you want to, but when you take a day off, you suffer. You're not getting paid when you're
yeah.
taking a day off.
Hmm.
So I'm glad that you brought up that point too. It is very, very difficult to be an entrepreneur or like freelance. It does come with its own beauty, but you have to be prepared. They're going to be working a lot harder than a 9 to 5 in
For
some
sure.
cases. Yeah.
100%.
Speaking of all these things that we're talking about, because you started really young, was this
Hmm.
something that you felt like you wanted to do since you were a little kid? Like, was this in you, or did you want to be something else and then eventually grew into this? Like, I want to know how this
Yep.
journey started.
Man. So wow. Like so I grew up in Saraville in New Jersey. It's just like a suburb town.
Yeah,
Um and the special thing about Saraville is like you have all these different type of kids that live there. You have the working class, and then you have like the middle class, and then it's like a big melting pot, a pot of two classes. So you're experiencing a lot of different type of personalities, which I feel like help shape me as a person
mm,
and also shape my upbringing. So in middle school, man, I was so big into music. I was a rapper. And then eventually I developed that into like building my own little studio in my basement at the house, and we were living in Saraville. And back then, man, like right now, like you want to start like a mic setup and everything, go to
yeah,
Amazon real quick. You got the whole
yeah,
package done. Boom. Back then, it wasn't that simple. Like you got to get a preamp, all these other
yeah,
this equipment and everything. So I I was working at a job in like 7-Eleven and like just odd jobs like high school jobs. Gather enough money to build a little studio in my basement, and started playing around with it. Learned how to mix and engineer. Did a couple songs. So I had a crew, a label in my high school called TRS, which is short for the Rap Supremacy. And that's like
this
when
is
that's like when
amazing.
my whole yeah. So that's when my whole I guess entrepreneurial, creative, and like pursuit of this type of lifestyle, creative lifestyle began. Middle school into high school, and man, like this is around time of MySpace music. Like, yo, I also like had to figure that shit out, like MySpace music, and that was like first thing we had. The first, little taste of social media we had was MySpace,
Yep,
right? So I don't know if you remember, but MySpace music was a big part of that.
yeah,
So, I had a whole uh, TRS brand page. I used to be on the AOL chat rooms. So it's like this little grassroots marketing that I was dabbling with before even getting into fashion. So with music, with having a label, a lot of it, which I think was uh, allowing our label to buzz because it was buzzing a little bit. I was
yeah.
actually on MTV too.
Ooh, I gotta
would
go.
not.
I
I
gotta go
was,
find some clips and some tracks.
man, I've been trying and trying, but the internet wasn't that popping back then. But
No.
I got a couple screenshots. But I was on MTV2 Sucker Freestyles twice.
Oh damn! I
So
remember
yeah,
those.
yeah. So I was there twice, man. So that's like my start as far as like what I wanted to do. So it originated from music, and then with having a music label, a lot of his branding, which I feel like the TRS movement was, displaying really well.
Yeah.
So I learned that branding is important as well, and that kind of just like shifted everything into more visuals, which eventually became design, which eventually became fashion.
Dude, it's so cool for you to really go into and explain that story, is because also when people sometimes see someone, right, they don't see the full picture of how much
Mm,
has happened to get to where you are now, or even
yeah.
before you hit 18, like when you made a decision that you wanted to leave school. So much has happened already
Yep.
that has shaped
So
your
much.
path. It wasn't like you woke up one day, it's like, I ain't going to school no more, I'm just going to do this, or I'm going to try this out, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Yep.
really beautiful to see, like the full story. Um, I would love to know a little bit more about, once you decided that this is what you were going to do, and moving forward. You said it was three of you guys that started this. What your role what your role is, and what you guys do now. Like, what is more of your day to day now, so people have a
Yeah.
better idea of
So
what you do.
for sure. So the company is Fraz, Aram, and myself. Again, we're cousins, so it's like a family business as well. The roles, man, like as founders, man, you're pretty much touching everything, especially in the beginning. Fraz and I designed. Aram's like, sustaining the business for like the 13 years we've been doing it, which is a huge, huge, huge responsibility itself.
Yeah.
Um, so right now, like, it's a little bit of everything. As you like in the earlier years when you're building a brand, it's mostly about just grassroots marketing and just getting the brand out, getting the name out. And now it's like a full functioning business. So a lot of it is just business. A lot of our day to day is actually like a lot of times is real work. Sales pitch, proposals. It's not always just designing and like going to these shows, meeting up with celebrities, and all the sexy
Yeah.
things you see on the gram. A lot of it is work. So at the moment, like right now, as we're kicking the new year off, I'm basically doing a lot of reach outs for collaborations that we want to attack,
Hmm.
as well as a lot of the big retail stores we want to do. And then also again, like going back to like the whole, the profound is like we're focusing more on the business side of it. While we have like the whole luxury, sexy, luxury, high end part of the brand moving, we're also trying to show growth in the business part of it, and that's what like opportunities with like private label. For those who don't know what private label is, like for example, we partner with Fashion Nova to do designs for their graphic T-shirts. So just recently, last week, we just finished up our second round of graphic T-shirt designs that we're creating for Fashion Nova. And again, this is like not co-branded. This is for Fashion Nova, just designed by us, and they cut us a check, things like that. So again, like day to day, man, it's just like half figuring out how to grow not just the brand but the business as well, and like opportunities like this.
That's really cool. I think you're hitting on like all the like right things that people should understand, right? Because it's probably, I can't, even in the time that I know, so many people have tried to start a brand, and a lot of brown people have started brands, and a lot of them
Yeah.
have crashed and burned, obviously. And it's amazing to see what you guys have accomplished and the places that you guys are in now, and it's
Oh,
amazing.
thank you, man.
and and no, it's cool as hell, man. How many
Thank you.
other brown brands can you name that are in the stores that you're in? Not a
Man,
lot, or if any. So
man, if
it's
I'm
really
forgetting
cool.
somebody, I apologize, but
No, but it's important for people to understand, one, the hard work, but also what you just said. Like, it's not all the sexy, oh, I'm not sitting in front of my
yep,
laptop just designing all the time. There's a lot of
yep,
like
yep,
work that goes behind that is not
one
what you
thousand
think it's
percent,
going to be. You're not just sitting there designing stuff all day or meeting celebrities. There's a lot of other stuff going. I'm glad that you hit on that.
exactly.
Now,
Yeah,
seeing the level of success that you guys have hit, right? And I'm sure the resistance that you got from your parents when you first decided to do this, how do they feel about what you've done now?
Oh man, good question. That's a real good question because I don't get to talk about that a lot. So they actually still don't know exactly what I do because at the end of
It sounds
at the
about
end of
right.
the day, yeah, they just don't understand it. So I'll give you an example, bro. So this is a couple. So um, the office in Jersey is like 10 minutes from my house. So a lot of times I stop by for lunch just so I could
Yeah.
keep seeing them.
Yeah.
The other day, like my mom is like an OG. She's an entrepreneur, even though she never had experience with entrepreneurship. But she's like, she knows that I'm some kind of entrepreneur, right? Like
Yeah.
start businesses, this and that, right?
Yeah.
Um, but she just doesn't understand. So um, she's like, let's start a meat business, online meat business, and put it under Profound, and then ship it like to other stores, um, like wholesalers and that. Like let's start um, like a flea market type of thing, but under Profound. Like she doesn't know that Profound is a brand, a label. You can't just sell anything on it, you know.
Yeah.
But again, like they don't know what it is. But what do I want to talk about is that in the beginning it was really tough because
Yeah.
because of the fact that they just didn't know what creating a brand was or what entrepreneurship was.
Yeah.
So man, in the beginning I really did struggle with kind of like just keep going at it, knowing that the people that you love and you're like the foundation of your life isn't really supporting you. That's always a big struggle, especially during like my 20s, my early 20s. Like shit, my mom doesn't like me. you know so
That's an incredibly powerful statement that the foundation of your life in that during that time is not supported. That's incredibly powerful because it is
yeah.
something that you don't think about, and people don't understand. It is true, especially those early years of what you mentioned. That is
Yep.
insane and insanely difficult. So I give you a lot of
Yeah.
credit for like fighting that and going through. But I
Thank
also
you.
think it's really funny and really sweet that your mom now, and it's funny. Two things. One, I think when we were younger, I never heard the word entrepreneur, but I always hear businessman, right? I don't, it was a very
Businessman.
broad term, like,
Yeah.
oh,
That's what she
he's a
thinks I
businessman.
am.
You're a
Yeah.
businessman. I mean, you are a businessman. But and it's funny now that you're doing it, she's like, yo, man, these guys are doing it. I'm about to start making my meat brand and put
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
put it. It's
Yeah.
sweet that she can have these conversations with you now. So
Yeah.
she
So
at
that's
least she
now.
sees it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's now.
That's now. So like, during the whole process. So to give a little bit more context as far as like, some of the things that I had to battle internally. So like
Yeah.
my partners, their siblings, Faraz and Niram, their parents, their whole family is very supportive. Um, and then on the contrast, me as being the other partner, it's like seeing both worlds, like living in a world where you don't get the support, but also
Oh,
firsthand witnessing my partner's family being very involved and very supportive to like the point where like back early on when we didn't have that many employees, we got to get an Urban Outfitters order out. At the time we were selling our Urban Outfitters, and being backed up, and then having like their whole family help support, and then me getting a phone call from my parents like it's like it's so late, what are you doing still,
yeah,
spending your time on this, like
yeah,
are you, like, and it's like are you even making money and like this and that, and it's like working in an environment where it's you're seeing the contrast as far as like parents go, because again like my partners are my family too, so they're
yeah.
also other family members helping out, but then my own parents not showing the same type of support. So that was a really rough internal battle, because only because I'm seeing both
You're
sides, because like I'm
seeing it.
seeing my extended family being involved with my partner's family, but my own family is not even just not supporting it, but also just like bashing it, kind of.
Dude, that's
You know?
incredibly difficult. And I can't imagine how tough that would be because you are seeing it. Because sometimes you just hear about it, but you're seeing it firsthand
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the
yeah.
people that you're doing business with.
Yep.
Uh, that's very, very difficult to deal with. I
Yeah,
can't
it's
imagine.
tough. It was tough.
Yeah. But I'm glad you
But
got through it and you pushed through it and you stuck with it because look at where you guys are now.
yeah,
Even if they don't still fully understand it, right? Even for
yeah,
yourself.
yeah. I mean, like, I can't go show my mom like, oh, Gunna's wearing our fit, you know? Like she don't know. You know what's funny? So
Yeah,
it's actually like I came. I'm content with it now, right? So I play with it sometimes just for my
yeah,
enjoyment. So my mom she had COVID in December, but she's
yeah.
fully recovered. She's good now. And I was
Great.
talking to Gunna at the time, and I was telling him, we're just like small talking because I was
Yeah.
sending out the new collection, and I was like, oh, just letting him. He was asking me how the feeling was. I told him about my mom. I was like, oh, I'm praying for you. So I went to go see my mom, and I just like, oh, by the way, Gunna's praying for you, and she's like, thanks. So I just have fun with it, right? So like, tell him I said thanks.
Only
I was like,
if only she could
Mom, Gunna praying
understand.
for you, Mom. Yeah. Yeah, so it's not their fault, man. They just don't understand what we're doing, or like like the trophies that we win. They don't get it.
Yeah,
Like my mom and my dad, they know stores like Saks Fifth Avenue and stuff, but a lot of the other stores they don't know. So
yeah.
um,
It
so now it's cool now. It's cool now though. Like alhamdulillah, married now. We have our own house. We have stability in our lives. I think that's all they want to see.
yeah.
They
At the end
want
of the
they just
day,
want to see stability.
and she should know the gun is praying for her. I mean, that's something.
And Gunna's praying for you, mama.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's two things that you brought up that are important. One, I understand a little bit of this, and even in what we do. So it might not like my parents. I think they I think my mom is more happy that she saw two of her sons working together,
Mm.
more so because it's one of the parents' dream that kids stay together and
Yeah, yeah,
blah blah.
yeah.
I mean, I think she's more happy about that than sometimes of what we do. And I remember we've been fortunate enough to do some pretty cool projects, right? And there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff that I was like, oh, this is amazing. But I think for them, I think it didn't really hit them, and even people around me, even like a lot of my friends and even my in-laws and stuff, like it didn't really hit them until you hit something like you mentioned like Saks Fifth Avenue, like something like a lot of people know about, especially in Desi
Yeah.
community too. Like when we hit the when we were doing something on the red carpet at the Oscars, like that was a
Mm.
really big deal for everybody because it's something they can identify with. Or when we were shooting backstage at the Victoria's Secret show, I mean, everybody knows about Victoria's Secret, so like, oh,
Yeah,
these
yeah,
dudes are
yeah.
there. This must be something like
Yep.
big. And I'm like, yo, there's
Everything
so many
changes.
things.
Yep.
But there's so many things that we've done that are like I felt like much more meaningful or
Proud of.
whatever that I'm proud
Yeah.
of. Yeah. And then we
Yeah.
we did something with Myra Khan, who's big in the Pakistani
Yeah, I
world. And
saw that.
I but prior to that, I've never really heard my in-laws ever hit me up about any of this stuff. But I did that, and they were just like, "Yo, can't believe you're
There
working with Myra
is.
Khan." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay." I mean, it was an incredibly great experience, and I actually she's such an amazing person. But it's just funny that they'll find little things, and I take those small victories. I'm like, cool. At least they saw some part of my world, and they understand a little bit of it, whatever it is. At least they get it. But fully, I don't
Yep.
think they're ever gonna understand. And
They're never
that's
gonna get it.
something.
So yeah, they're never gonna understand. And like in hindsight, it's just like if I were to go back, I wouldn't have let it bother me that much than it did. Like during the earlier years when the time is critical, as far as like you're spending all your time, your energy on this, not making
Yeah,
much back, but and then you just want to look for some support through this hard journey, and you don't have that support. It's tough, so you have to find it within yourself, which I was able to build within myself, the confidence within myself. So that was the hard part, man.
dude, I
But
think that it's terrible, and I brought this up a couple of times before, and it's something that I saw later, but this idea that, for example, if at 18 you were deciding that, hey, ma, I was gonna do, or I'm gonna do med school, right? But I'm gonna do the program
mhm,
that goes straight from like I'm going into the early. If there's some programs that start in college and you go straight from there, but you're not gonna see me. You're not really gonna hear from me. I'm gonna be really busy. Everything that you possibly can do is excused, right? You don't show up to family events. You don't show up to birthdays. You don't do anything. Everything is excused because you're in medicine and you get all the love and support possible. If
mhm.
you put the same kind of time, energy, effort, money, blood, sweat, and tears in anything else that they don't understand, it's considered like, yo, what are you doing? Like, what a wait, like, why are
Yeah.
you wasting your time? Or like even after dropping out of med school, and like when we got really busy with work, there was times where like I was not available, and then people were just like, what do you mean you're not available? Like, it's a wedding, you got to show up. I was like, nah, I have stuff to do. Like, but if I was
Yeah.
in med school, I missed a lot of things. No one ever questioned why I was missing anything. And I think it's really unfortunate that that mindset has to change. That you know, the time, energy that you dedicated and what you're doing is why where you are today. So if you had gotten the love and support along the way, it probably would have pushed you, I don't know, like to do better, or at least you would have been a little bit happier doing it. It's always nice
Yeah,
to have that support. So I
for
wish that's
sure.
something that's changed, that people understand, especially if you're good at something and you're really busting your ass, right? And you're going
Mhm.
in, you deserve that
Mhm.
support. Well, I think you do.
Mhm.
But I don't know if that's always seen that way. And it's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
man. It's like I'm sure people go through it.
Yeah.
You know, like everything, like a lot of success stories. I watched a lot of podcasts or interviews, and a lot of entrepreneurs talk about, you know, like their parents having their back and like, you know, like them pushing them push forward. But it's very rare that I find the alternative, and it's probably because, you know, for entrepreneurs who have that challenge, it's really hard to hit the finish line or just like start continue going down the way. It's draining, especially when you're young and you're living with them. It's draining to have
Yeah.
be living in the same space while pursuing something that you truly believe in, but then, you know, your own parents or your own
Yeah.
family not really, you know, jiving with it. But so in hindsight, like as I'm older now, I look back at it, and I do remember. So I actually wanted to talk about this. So I remember one of the conversations I've had with my father, and I forgot what it was. It was something about the earlier years and like me basically dropping out. So I'm like 21, where I should be in like my prime as far as starting a career and everything.
Yeah.
So he really was like, he just like started going off on me one night. Maybe I forgot what triggered it, what the context around it was, but he was just like, you know, like talking about, you know, the direction where I should be headed and how this shouldn't be where I should be headed, or in, you know, like basically like downplaying what I'm doing.
Yeah.
This again, this is the earlier years, and I remember one thing he did say, and it kind of shut me up. So he was like, I was basically saying something back to him, saying like, you know, oh, you don't. I was like, you won't understand because you don't even like care to understand. You don't even care to just like support or care to learn what I'm doing, right? And so I said something like, "Oh, you know, talking about support." So basically, he said something around like, you know, me not um, showing any interest, meaning like asking me questions about it, like, "Oh, what are you up to? How's your day? How's the brand?" Um, is me supporting you because I let you do whatever you want. I don't question it. I don't
Mm.
ask you, you know, I don't ask you like, what's your plan, this and that. As far as the brand goes, he's like, he's just looking at it on a surface
Yeah.
level, surface value level. As far as like, here's your input, like input and output. Here's what
Yeah.
you like putting in as far as your
Yeah.
work. What are the successes that you have so far? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just recently thought about that moment.
That's an interesting
Yeah.
point for him to bring up, him kind of trying to implying that, hey, I trust you, that's why maybe he's saying like, I'm trust you doing what you're supposed to be doing, so that's why I'm not going to ask. But you know, like that goes back to the point. I think that the complicated thing is, from my understanding, when you're entrepreneurs, like there's no end date, right? There's not like, oh, when I reach this time or in this many years I'll be
Yeah.
here. And if you take that, I can only bring it back to what I know. Like if I was in med school and I'm like 1 year into it and someone's like, oh, so what do you have to show for it? And I'm like, I don't have
Mhm.
shit. Like, you know, after 2 years,
Yeah.
what do you have to show for it? I was like, I don't have anything. Like that's how it
Yeah.
is. But people understand that because that is something that they know. But if you were saying like, hey, if I put, so like I would have to put in 4 years of college, 4 years of med school, and then like 3 to 4 years of residency to get to that point, right? And if I tell someone else, hey, I'm going to put about 12 years of my life into this, don't ask me questions for 12 years,
Yeah.
and let me use, I don't know, like a $200,000 or whatever to get there. No one's gonna want to do that. Like no one's gonna understand that. But it's like the same thing. Like you're putting in that much time, energy, and effort into,
Hmm.
like, because you said you're 31 now.
31. Yep.
Yeah. So you've been doing this for like 13 years. And like now
Yep.
you have a
My whole
lot to
adult
show.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you have like, but that is the same amount of time you would have spent if you did something more traditional. And
It's
now you
true.
would be, you know, getting the fruits of that labor. But
Yeah.
people
But you
don't
know what the
see it that
difference
way.
is? You know what the difference is, bro? The difference is that you're basically pursuing something that has like an end goal as far as
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
all right, you get through all that. I think you mentioned this, but and then you become a doctor. Over here is like
Yeah.
you might fail, you might do all this and just not come out with anything. which is a valid point.
Yeah.
That's a valid point. You know,
Yeah.
and I think of it because I'm like, again, like I'm married for 3 years. You know, inshallah, I have kids too, and I'm thinking like if my kids wanted to be an entrepreneur and I'm not like really digging their idea, how would I really react to it?
Yeah.
How would you react to it?
I don't know. So
If you,
someone asked me all the time. They're like, "Oh, what if your kid?" They usually ask me like, "Oh, so what if your kid wants to pursue medicine?" I'll be like, "Yo, fuck that." But the truth is, like, if they really want, so I have a son now, and so people ask like, "Oh, what would you do?" I was like, honestly, I would hope that I'm a supportive parent, and I try to do my best to like guide and support him throughout his life, and hopefully, you know, early on see signs or skills that he has, and try to, you know, encourage those and.
yeah,
It goes wherever it goes. But if he's older and he says, "Hey, I want to pursue medicine," that's fine too, as long as it's definitely something that he really wants to do and he's good at it. Then go for it. I'm gonna
yeah,
hope that that's how I am, but who knows how it's gonna be
yeah,
until it happens. You don't
because you know
know.
we're talking about this topic about like, you know, the narrative like, oh, they see parents pushing a career that, you know, most young people don't want to pursue these days.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of us haven't been put in the situation yet.
No, they haven't. It's
Yeah,
someone brought
so
what did they the other day someone asked me like, "Oh, what if your son wants to be a gamer?" And I'm like, "Yo, I have to try to be more progressive." And I love playing video games, right? And I
yeah,
personally can see the potential, and like I do consider these, like, they have legit careers now. But for
yeah,
someone
yeah.
else, they were trying to shit on it. They were like, "Oh, like, what if you want to be a gamer?" I'll be like, "Yo, that'd be amazing. I consider playing games with them." But like
Man,
they'll
but
what
I was gonna say like, so that's something you would support?
if he's actually good at it. But see, I can't be a hypocrite. If he really is good at it, if he wants to pursue it, and now, in the world we live in right now, there is careers that you like. There is stuff you could do. Just like people
Yep,
who are YouTube who game, right?
yep,
Some of the most
yep.
successful people who are making a lot of money, they're like doing fine, but it's still a big gamble. But I have to.
Huge,
That's what we were just talking about. When you're put in the
huge.
situation, you have to try your best to be as supportive as possible, and also, you know, realistic. It depends. If
Mm-hmm.
my kid sucks at it, and now he's like, "Oh, I want to do this," I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if this is the right move. Maybe you should explore
Yeah,
other. It's going to be really tricky. And right now, we're thinking about it in the context of what we know. And just like our parents, like, you know, 20 years from now, things are going to change drastically. So there'll be a
so
lot that I
much.
don't know. So then when I'm
Mm-hmm.
presented with something, I might be like, "Oh, I have no idea what this is." So it's going to be much
Mm-hmm.
more difficult. But something you said very early on is the importance of constantly learning. My goal, as just as a parent especially, is also constantly learning as much as I can. So even not only to stay cool and hip or whatever, but to be try to understand what he's going through. Like, even if I don't like the music or whatever he listens to, just understand it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
whatever is going on in the world at that time, hopefully I have kept up with it enough to at least I have information to make a decision, and not just be like, "Oh, I don't know, so I don't want you to do it because I don't know anything about it." But we'll see.
Mm.
How do you feel about that when someone when they're going to present you with an opportunity that you might not know about?
I think, see, I would try to basically prime a self-awareness to, you know, my children, as far as like being very keen on their self-awareness. Like they know they're really good at something, or they know they really suck at something. And that's one of the, you know, the qualities of an entrepreneur, which I think are very beneficial to have, is that self-awareness. Is like you need to know that you're doing something right or doing something wrong very early on before getting too deep. You know what I mean? So I hope to, you know, kind of just like prime that into them. So that's some things that I'll focus on. You know, like I haven't really given much thought as far as like, would I push some type of career path
Yeah.
to them? I would definitely want them to have really high education, despite me being a dropout, despite my thoughts on the whole schooling
Yeah.
system. So I was just never put in the situation, man. We'll see what happens,
Yeah. That's the right answer. I
let's
love the
see.
fact that you brought in self-awareness. Self-awareness is key, and it is good
Yeah,
to know.
it's
It would
huge.
be amazing if they're aware of what they're good and what they're not. But but
Yep.
honestly, I have a kid right now, and most of it is like, who the hell knows? Like, you just don't know what you're gonna get. You're gonna try your best, and then you'll see what happens.
Yeah.
One thing, since we're talking about this, you know, if
Mm-hmm.
somebody wanted to pursue a similar path to what you did, right, and now knowing
Mm-hmm.
everything that you know, how would you recommend they get to that? Because you went a very untraditional? I guess all of these entrepreneurs are untraditional, but if you had recommendations of like, oh, I would recommend you go down this path, what would you say?
As far as like starting a brand goes.
Yeah, starting a brand, if that's something they want to do.
Mm. Um, well, I can break it down this way. As far as like being a brand owner, which is essentially an entrepreneur, my suggestion is one to build that self awareness. Figure out if you're actually like legit good, you know. Um, and a lot of that is just putting your work out there, getting some feedback in the social media world. Figure out if you're legit really good at this stuff, right? Two, this business actually costs a lot of money, but as far as like to run it on like a scale where you're basically making a living off of it, but at the same time there's so many resources now where you can build a brand without very 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 little startup investment. There's so many resources, like there's apps where it's like print on demand, just throw up a design, build an Instagram page, throw it up. So just one, I would say like try to do stuff like that and figure out if you can build a customer.
Mhm.
So self that goes back to self-awareness. Just figure out if this is something you're good at.
Yeah.
The second part of it is, though there's like this whole cool cloud-based thing as far as like being a designer goes, you definitely have to study how the business works. The business of getting into these retail stores, like how does that work? They buy like seasons in advance. You know, I know you have experience we're working with fashion brands shooting their content. There's like seasons in advance. Like
Yeah.
if you want to get to XYZ store, this is how you have to get to XYZ store. This is how the business operates. So definitely learn the business of fashion. I can tell you firsthand my personal experience. I read Mark Echo's Unlabeled book. I think it's called Unlabel Me, something like that. That was very useful for me, um, to learn firsthand how Mark Echo built his brand. It was also from Jersey, from his garage or basement, whatever it was, to where what became one of the most successful streetwear brands in history so far.
Yeah.
So yeah, just get your knowledge up, and then as far as like your being your own self, is like don't get too attached on the emotional side of like opinions and feedback. Um, Leave emotion out of it, because when you're a designer or any type of artist or any type of creative, obviously your work is very valuable to you. It's like your baby, right? You put a lot of
Yeah.
time and energy. You're very proud of your work, right? And then very easily a buyer of a store can be like, I don't want to pick this up, this is not good, right?
Yeah.
And that can make you feel shitty as a designer,
Yep.
because a lot of designers are very proud of what they create. Like, why shouldn't
Yeah.
you be? So separating that emotion to your work can definitely strengthen your like emotional intelligence, which allows you to keep going, keep going, keep going. And it still sucks. Like again, like the whole, for example, the Fashion Nova project that we're doing. I sent like this guy a line sheet, which is basically the assortment of collections, and he's taking mad long to reply to me, and I just spent mad hours and work, and which I'm really proud of the designs. Like, damn, bro, like, yo, give me a freaking reply. But people are busy. Like, you gotta
Yeah.
understand like how the business works. Like, there's budgets,
Yeah.
It's like when they could buy. So learn the business and get your emotions out of the freaking door.
I, the emotions
Yo,
thing is
ain't no time, ain't no time for no fucking emotions, man.
yeah, but it's so true.
Leave
It's
that
so
shit
true
out the door.
because you're creating it. People do get attached to it, and sometimes like I've seen it happen too. Even in like the simple things that we do. Like we had an intern one time, and like he was editing something, and
Mhm.
he was really happy and proud about it, and then he put a song in it, and the guy, as soon as he hears like, yo, I hate this song. And then
Yep.
he's like, you got to change, and he's like, nah, but this
Yeah.
is like, this is the song, like this is what he's like,
Yeah.
nah, I hate it. And then he was really upset, and I was like, what are you upset
Uh-huh.
about? Like you can't be upset about it. You just have to move on. And
Yeah.
it's funny
You.
that you say that, because as a designer, it's even way more involved in that, because you spend
Yep.
so much time and energy
Mhm.
and love and create something. You could show up to some place and they're like, eh. Or if you read a review of
Yep.
like your line, like after you do a show or something, and they're like,
Yep.
that was
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
people get caught up
hurtful.
with that. People get caught up on chasing like and like fighting the internet. You cannot beat the internet. The
Nah.
internet is is undefeated. But I want to ask you, like, because you know, you guys, with Happy Monday and everything, there's a lot of client based work. So you're obviously showing somebody for approvals, right? For the
Yeah.
work that you make.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself getting caught up emotionally as far as like attachment to your work?
Yeah, dude, it's happened multiple, like, that example with that kid, that's happened to me too. But Atif had told me very, very early on when we first started doing it, he's like, yo, listen, when we're creating something, we're not
Mm-hmm.
creating for ourselves, we're creating for the client, right? This is theirs, it's not
Yeah.
ours. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
understand whatever the feedback they give, you have to adapt to that. There is very few instances where we believe in something strongly enough where we would fight it and tell them that, yo, it would only be the
Oh
case if
yeah,
we
for
feel like
sure. Yeah, yeah.
if it's better for the brand, we're like, yo, this is will be better. It's not a personal
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's like, yo, this just overall will be better. That's the only time we'll fight. Otherwise, there's so many rounds of edits that happen from the start of what you think you want it to be, and sometimes what it ends up being. That it's just the way it is. So you have to mold it to shape it to be what they want, and
Yeah.
it's not about you. So
Right.
that's happened a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, just to recap, the advice would be to, let's try to separate, as far as being creatives goes, separate the emotions out of the work
Yeah.
and learn the business and build the self awareness.
What do you
Those
think
three.
was? What do you think has been the hardest thing for you, like struggles in building your brand personally?
There's so much, man. We've been doing this for like 12 years, so we counter
Yeah.
so many different, stages and levels to it. But I guess like the common denominator always been, which is just like a general challenge for anybody doing this, is you always got to find the gatekeeper to what
Mm,
you're trying to achieve. There's always somebody who fills this role to be giving the yeses and nos to what you're
yes.
trying to achieve. Uh, so be really quick to find that gatekeeper, who that person is. That's always the hardest challenge. And some of these gatekeepers are freaking tough, especially these days. These freaking bloggers think they're the king of the whole damn world.
Things have changed.
They
It's funny that you say that. When I was talking to Atif Kazmi, he said that too. He said this thing is like this one person. Usually there's
mm-hmm.
one person on the other end who's making the
Yep.
decision, right? And it's just
Oh
so
man,
interesting how that works because you can go through a lot, and then at the end of it, it's usually one person. And then
it's just
it is
that
true, like
person.
it's just that be nice, figure it out who it is, and make sure you know how to navigate that. But that's what it
Yeah.
ends up being.
Yeah. So, to like just to further elaborate on your question, as far as like the challenges, finding the gatekeeper with the resources and tools we have, especially social media, is not that hard to find that person, but it's just like getting their attention. That's always the hard part. And basically in the space that I work, a lot of it is just like circles, right? You have the Virgil Abloh circle, and
Yeah.
it's all the circles like everybody just put everybody else on. It's like trying to get into that level without having those connections. Like everybody is like in a way associated with Kanye West, who's doing well right now. You know,
Yeah.
Jerry, Virgil, in the fashion space, Heron, they're all connected, right? So how do you get
Yeah.
into that circle without that type of connection? So that's what was the biggest challenge. And then one of the other challenges we face is, while we're on the topic of challenges, since we've been around for so long, and fashion has been changing, even the retail space has been changing, where stores have been closing left and right.
Yeah.
So you got to keep adapting. That's focusing on digital is obviously a challenge that we had to face and overcome, and which we've done. So just to give some context around that, so a large, like let's say 2018, a large part of our business was wholesale. We had agencies all over the world, from freaking Spain, Italy, Australia, Europe, and that's a monster. You're managing all these different agencies to basic sales agencies
Yeah.
to sell your stuff to doors, and then come down to when it's time to deliver a shipment, they're like, oh, we're already closed, we shut down, this company's out of business. So
Yeah.
fashion's very pivotal, and you have to keep adapting. Retail space right now is very pivotal, you have to keep adapting. So challenges is like adapting to how fast fashion moves, that not just trend based, just like how the business moves.
Yeah.
Like even for you guys, like you guys doing fashion shows, you're not doing fashion shows on the runway because of COVID.
Yeah. It's
It's
very
like
different now.
very different. Yeah.
things, the technology changing too for us. Like technology changes a lot of what we do. There's one thing I wanted to ask you related to
Mm,
fashion, and then you guys being brown. Do you, because you're
mm.
talking about those circles, do you feel like, or have you ever felt like being brown as it has inhibited you from breaking through like a glass ceiling, or like breaking through into a circle?
Um, I don't know, man. Uh, I mean, so there's two spaces where that can play a role. Um, so I'll touch on the first one. First one is like for a fashion brand of like the space where we at, celebrity influence is very powerful and kind of necessary, right? To
Yeah.
be on a level where you want to be, right? Especially in the States, they're obsessed with celebrities, who's wearing what. So in the celebrity space, a lot of the people that we target or have worn our stuff are rappers, hip hop artists, and people in that hip hop space, and just generally celebrity culture. So one challenge or one thing that was like kind of a, oh, we're brown, and further than that we're Muslim, is like, I don't drink because of my religion, being Muslim, brown person. And it's
Yeah.
like being around that space where I'm hanging out with, for example, um I'm trying to think of a recent situation, is like, let's just say, like, let's say the weekend we were trying to get stuff on the weekend, which we
Yeah.
eventually end up doing. But it's like being in that space and environment where they're freaking drinking and this and that, and it's like they're passing you this, and you're like, oh nah, man, dude, I'm Muslim, I don't drink. It's like
Yeah.
it breaks that it breaks that
Yeah.
connection, and like there's so many situations like, not just being brown. I don't think being brown was too much of an obstacle
Yeah.
for like, as far as like celebrities go, but definitely being Muslim and like you valuing like, some parts of the religion that you trying to keep.
Yeah.
So
No, but that's such a good point. It is something that comes
yeah,
up a lot. Like when you're like networking, or people are like, oh, let's go get a drink, and
yeah,
the way people normally
yeah,
make
yeah,
connections,
yep,
that stuff can be like, if you don't do that, or if you
yeah,
don't participate in
yeah,
that, it
yeah,
happens. And
yeah,
like it is a very good point to bring up, and that will, and because that is some of part of the culture is around that, and if you're not participating,
yeah,
it makes it difficult.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
is
for
interesting.
sure. As
Yeah.
far as like the fashion space goes, I haven't really seen it as an obstacle as far as like this fashion space goes. Only the only thing I've seen was like you have to be connected to somebody else who's in that big circle in fashion right now.
To get
So
in.
yeah,
So it's crazy. Like no matter what industry it is, it always ends up being who you know.
who you know is always everything, man. You gotta build. Man, I do. I'm hitting up people on Instagram all the time. I encourage everybody to do that. Like I said, going back to gatekeepers, bro. There's always that one person. You got to keep finding that person.
Yeah.
You gotta find those
Get their
gatekeepers.
attention.
Yeah, you gotta get those gatekeepers. That's what it's all about.
That is very true. Before we start wrapping it up, do you, aside from the amazing things that you touched on and the advice that you give it, if you aside from the family stuff that you brought up for yourself, if you had to talk to your younger self, like 15 years old, do you have any advice for your younger self?
Um, it will be pretty much the same advice that I gave as far as like for how to follow his path.
Yeah.
Just do it early on. So I'll try and think as far as like the advice. I think the whole emotional part of it was big. Not
Yeah.
just as far as like the being emotionally attached to your creativity, but also like the opinions of your family or your
Yeah.
parents. Um, I might have been more emotionally intelligent in certain situations in the past if I wasn't so like just dwelling on how my parents were not being supportive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm sure, like I can't recall a specific moment, but I'm sure there's moments where like it just puts me down and like I was unable to do what I should be doing as far as like the best my ability because how I was feeling. Uh, your man, it's like your thoughts is control everything outward. Your inner thoughts control everything outward. So definitely try to build that emotional intelligence. I stress that a lot. Emotional intelligence is everything.
You,
It
it's
go and sorry to cut you off,
no,
but
no, no, go.
just like expanding on why emotional intelligence is so important and how it is basically associated with the topic that of your whole podcast, your whole platform, is because um, it basically comes down to support and it's like encouragement. Um, you know, and everything you're taught is like be a doctor, be an engineer, be a lawyer, be successful. You know, and then it's a big emotional battle, bro. Like especially
It
when
is.
when you're starting to make these career decisions. It's like when you're 18, you know, 18, 19, 20, you know, you're just trying to figure out life yourself because like a lot of brown parents don't even let you go out to the world until until you're 19. It's like shit, I just got here in this world. I got to figure out what I want to do too, you know?
Dude,
So
that is one of the best things. That's such an important thing that you hit on. That, like, I guess
yeah,
I didn't,
I just got here.
I just got here. It's
I
you're not
just got
allowed to
here.
go. You're not allowed to go
Yeah.
out, and it's even more. It's even more difficult growing up if you're a female, right? It's even more
Yeah,
difficult.
that's
Like
that. Yeah,
it's
that's what I
crazy.
was
And
basically trying to touch on. Is like you know, from specifically from a female perspective, is like I just started to be a part of society for most people, you know.
yeah,
So you know,
and
hopefully
then now
we
they want you to
overcome that
figure it
too.
out.
Yeah, like figure out your whole life.
Dude, that's such a good point. It's so true. Like right when you're stepping in, see, that's why sometimes people talk about, like, some people are just ahead of the game because they've been exposed to certain things all your life. And then you're right, you just step in and you're like, oh shit, I just got here. Now I need to know what I'm gonna do. Like it's
Yeah,
so hard. I think that is also part of the reason why you see now more people like experimenting more when they get a little older, because they just didn't have that opportunity or those options
I
when they
agree.
were younger. But that is
Yeah,
such a good point.
yeah.
Um,
But I agree with what you just said as far as experimenting, and I think that one should, if they want, if you know, this is the type of path they want to do, as far as like whether it be entrepreneurial or creative or just like doing stuff on the side. There's nothing wrong with having a career and doing fun stuff on the side that they enjoy too. You know,
yeah.
like just keep experimenting with things, especially with the resources we have now. Like, bro, like even I'm experimenting with things. Like for example, like last year I just started throwing freaking parties and I hate going to parties and clubs, but I just wanted to create. I'm really a little bit of insight as far as like what I truly enjoy is like I'm not so big on the materialism of clothing or
Mhm.
fashion. I'm really into like the whole theatrical part of it, whether it be like, you know, editorials, styling, the looks. You know, it's like fashion and like everything. A lot of things in the culture is a lot of it just theater, bro. Like the
Yeah.
runways, it's theater. Like the stage setting and you know the sounds that go with it. Like fashion has so many different creative elements that go in it. You know, outside of just like a t-shirt or jacket. So I'm really into that and like the whole culture overall, especially with my childhood background being around music. You know, I didn't become a rapper, but um, at least
Never too late.
yeah. Like for example, like last year, not last year, 2019, right before the pandemic, you know, just started a like a me and my friends in there, we started a private entry, basically throwing parties, but like
Yeah.
curating in like a lifestyle way, where we invite special guests based on our network. So I say that to basically say, you know, we're always experimenting with different things and see if it works out. If it doesn't, screw it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, all the clubs closed down, so we're not throwing parties.
Yeah. No,
But
I think that's a really good point, and it's something that I try to talk about now. So like sometimes I'll have I say kids, but like these kids are like in their 20s, early 20s. They're like, yo man, I haven't figured it out. Look, I'm trying to figure out. Like I was like, yo man, you're so young. I would say, and this something
yeah,
goes back to what you said about if my son too. I feel like your late teens, early 20s, you should be experimenting, trying out everything you
oh
can.
for sure,
Yeah, if you have
yeah,
something stable, do that. But while you're doing that, try anything and everything
mm-hmm,
you could possibly do. That way, when you get
mm-hmm,
older, like when you're in my age, you'll have a much better idea of what you want and what you don't want. Because like what you're saying, even till this day, like even after leaving med school and doing what I'm doing, I'm still constantly doing other things on the side because
yeah,
there's so many things
because
that
you
I want to
love it, you
try.
love it, yeah,
Yeah.
because you love it,
Like,
you love,
I love to learn. And when you learn something new, like, oh shit, I didn't even know about this. I want to try this out.
yeah,
So I'm constantly doing that
yep,
too. And for some
yep,
people, that's just going to be the rest of our lives. And there's nothing wrong with
yeah,
that.
nothing,
Uh,
nothing at all.
well, going back, there was one thing I want to talk about fashion
Uh
related,
huh.
and this might be a little bit more
Okay.
serious, is like and when you were talking about the social circles, like how do you feel, or how do you guys deal with people who end up like imitating stuff that you guys do, and like dealing with that part of the business? Because I always find it interesting, and I wonder
Yeah.
what your take on that is.
I think it goes back to like the whole emotional part of it, man. Like just take it, because a lot of times, a lot of situations you can't legally do anything, or it's too expensive to even like give it any attention as far as like legal
Mm,
things goes. Imitation is always gonna happen. If you go around chasing like, oh, this person copying this person copying that, man, you're just wasting your energy on all that. It's bound to happen, especially in fashion, with fast fashion, Fashion Nova. We know what we figured out. We do business with the companies that are biting everybody else, like Fashion Nova. Like Fashion Nova, legit, bro, legit. If you go into, I don't mean to talk bad on our one of our partners, but if legit, if you go to Fashion Nova, there's a hoodie that's very, very, very similar to the one we have right now, right? As far as the design goes. So what do you do instead of trying to battle them? All right, cool. Let's work together, figure it out, and then you make money together. You know, I mean,
yeah.
you got to be smart. You just got to be smart, and just be aware of where you're focusing your energy. But yeah, knockoffs happen all the time, man. There was once a whole website. It was like profound aesthetic dot Korea or something like that, and they were legit like shipping. I was fully functioning website. And the way the laws work is like, there's international copyrights. So
Yeah.
you need to have it trademarked in every country. And this
Oh my
why
God.
spend why spend so much money doing that?
Yeah.
It's like you gotta just stay focused on what you're doing. It's gonna happen. You gotta accept it. It's part of the game. This is the game, bro. That's the
Especially
game.
if you're doing something really good, right? If you're doing it right, then people are gonna copy.
It's gonna happen. But fashion, this huge replica market. It's gonna happen. People knock off stuff all the time. I
Okay.
recently posted on my story. I don't know if you saw it. Um, like J.R. Smith, the basketball player,
Yeah.
in the Lakers, he was wearing one of our T-shirts, and immediately there was like, because like I was saying earlier, there's so many resources where you can literally pop up T-shirts designs in like a couple minutes.
Yeah.
But there's a direct, like, people had fakes up on the web and like posting it on Twitter the same
Wow.
day. So it happens, bro.
That that's something
Yeah, it
else.
happens.
All right, we're gonna wind this down, and I'm gonna get into probably the most important question of this whole interview for me is like, yo, what is your favorite pizza spot?
Man, I just moved to Somerset in Jersey.
Yeah.
So I found this pizzeria out here. It's called City Pizza. So if you're ever around New Brunswick, Jersey, like towards
Yeah.
the Rutgers area, bro, City Pizza is where it's at.
Okay. I gotta come.
That's my
I
favorite.
gotta come out there and try all these places that people have been recommending that I've never even heard of.
Yeah, bro, Jersey, especially the area I live at right now. Man, there's so many good spots out here as far as like eating. I don't know if you're a big foodie. Are you a big foodie?
Yeah. Can't you tell
Yeah.
me? I'm always eating and always looking for
Uh,
good food.
Man, there's nothing wrong with looking for good food.
Yeah.
But yeah, come down here. Let me know.
I forgot to ask you this when we were talking, but like, I would hope that you would be open to people reaching out if they wanted to get some advice, or if they wanted to get to know something better. If so, like, what is the best way of getting for them reaching out to you, getting in touch with you?
Um, I would definitely be open to anybody reaching out. I tried my best to be as responsive as possible. Instagram is the best way. Instagram is my first and last name, NABIL ZAIDI. Twitter, I'm pretty active on Twitter as well. So those two channels definitely.
Yeah. You thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and doing this, and enlightening us with all your knowledge, and this was just such a great conversation. I really appreciate it.
I enjoyed it too, man. Thank you for having me. Thank you for thinking of me. Apologize for taking so long to connect, but hey, we made it happen.
Yeah, this is great.
Made it
Thank you.
happen.